Hey gang, and welcome back. This week, me and the guys in New Jersey have gotten together for a special game of EDH. Many viewers have asked for a shake-up in the EDH format, either by doing Plane Chase or Vanguard, and I just so happen to own a few Vanguard cards. We chose the Vanguard cards at random, and this week while I was playing my Karametra God of Harvest deck, I drew Multani as my Vanguard card. This reduces my starting hand by 3 and my starting life by 2. Sean is playing his newly made Hapatra Vizier of Poison decks, and was paired off with Baron, who did not affect his starting hand and instead gave him +6 starting life. Tony is playing Omnath, Locus of Rage, or as he calls it, the Angry Jelly Bean, and he picked Urtai as his Vanguard, who reduces his starting hand by 1 and increases his starting life by 4. And last but not least, we have Harry playing Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker. He gets paired off with Gerard, who reduces his starting hand by 4 but has no impact on his starting life. Since my starting hand starts so small, I didn't want to go below 4, so I kept a hand with Forest, Thought Vessel, Soul Snare, and Mirari's Wake. Sean keeps a hand with Llanowar Wastes, 2 Swamps, a Forest, Quarry Hauler, Liliana's Influence, and Bone Splinters. Tony's opener had a Mountain, Rampaging Baloth, Farseek, Terrain Generator, Rugged Highlands, and Harvest Seasons. Harry keeps a hand with Nykthos, Duplicant, and Molten Primordial. I win the die roll and start us off. For my first turn, I play a Forest and pass to Tony. Tony plays Rugged Highlands, gains a life, and passes to Sean. Sean plays one of those sweet new Bolus Forests and passes to Harry. Harry draws 2 and plays a Foily Forgotten Caves and passes to me. I draw a card, but unfortunately it's not a land, so I pass to Tony. Tony plays a forest for his turn and casts Farseek, and then cheats and finds another forest. We're watching you, Tony. Sean plays a lovely Bolus Swamp to match his Bolus Forest, and casts Hapatra, Vizier of Poison. For Harry's turn, he draws 2, plays Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, and then casts a Foily Lightning Greaves before passing to me. During Harry's turn, thankfully someone had the foresight to read what Farseek does, and they corrected Tony, making him find a mountain instead of a forest. My turn makes me wish I'd picked Gerard, because drawing 1 card a turn and having that card not be a land is pretty sad. With nothing else, I pass to Tony. Tony plays a Terrain Generator for his turn, and passes to Sean. Sean plays a Swamp for his turn, and then casts Farhaven Elf, finding another forest. Moving to combat, Hapatra swings at Tony for 2 commander damage, and Tony responds by activating Terrain Generator to put a mountain onto the field. With Hapatra dealing combat damage to Tony, Sean is able to use her triggered ability and puts a -1/-1 counter on Farhaven Elf, killing the elf but giving him a 1/1 Death Touch Snake. With nothing else, he passes to Harry. Unbeknownst to Harry and myself, we made an unspoken pact to not draw lands, and Harry misses his land drop and has to cast Nim Deathmantle before passing to me. I finally draw a land and play a Plains this turn, and cast Thought Vessel, finally getting me back into the game. Being tapped out, I pass to Tony. Tony also once again on this trend of not drawing lands, and is forced to cast Reap and Sow, choosing to find a land card from his library, which in this case is Blighted Woodland. With nothing else, he passes to Sean. Sean plays Llanowar Wastes for his turn, and then casts Necroskitter before moving to combat. He swings Hapatra at Harry for 2, and the Snake at me for 1. With Hapatra dealing combat damage, Sean puts the -1/-1 counter on Necroskitter, and gets a 1/1 Snake. Harry draws 2 cards and plays a Mountain for his turn, then casts Filigree Familiar, gaining 2 life before equipping the little fox with the Lightning Greaves. With nothing else, he passes to me. Missing yet another land drop, I decide to cast Soul Snare and pass to Tony. Tony untaps, draws his card, and passes to Sean. Sean draws and plays a forest and moves straight to combat, swinging Hapatra at Tony. He opts to have Hapatra's trigger, put a -1/-1 counter on one of his snakes, killing the snake to generate a snake. Sean passes turn. Harry plays a Mountain, taps his Nykthos Shrine to Nyx to cast Soul Ring, and then casts Goblin Bombardment, and Tony responds by cracking Blighted Woodland. I play Rogue's Passage for my land drop for turn, and then have nothing else to do, wanting to keep mana up for Soul Snare, so I pass to Tony. Tony's turn sees Omnath, Locus of Rage come into play, and he plays a Mountain after his general's on the field, generating a 5/5 red and green elemental token. With nothing else, he passes to Sean. Sean's first main phase has Nest of Scarabs come into play. Sean is very frustrated at this point as he's unable to use his Vanguard's ability by sacrificing his token to bounce creatures back to their controller's hands. With nothing else, he decides to pass. Harry plays a Mountain for his turn, and then pays 6 to cast Duplicant, targeting Necroskitter. With Duplicant's ability on the stack, Sean opts to sacrifice Necroskitter to Baron to bounce Duplicant back to Harry's hand. With nothing else, Harry passes to me. For my turn, I play Secluded Steep, and pass to Tony. Tony's first main phase has Perilous Forays come into play, and he moves to combat, swinging Omnath and the token at Sean. Sean blocks Omnath with the snake, and lets 5 damage from the elemental token go through. In Tony's second main phase, he casts Fires of Yavimaya and passes to Sean. Sean draws and plays a Swamp, and then casts Liliana's Influence, putting a -1/-1 counter on all creatures he doesn't control. This amounts to 2, and he gets 2 1/1 Death Touch snakes. This also triggers Nest of Scarabs, and Sean is able to create 2 1/1 black insect tokens. Moving to combat, Hapatra deals 2 damage to Tony, and Sean chooses to have a -1/-1 counter put on a snake, giving him another snake and another scarab. Harry's turn has him casting Mind Stone and following it up with Emrakul's Hatcher, giving him a body and 3 0/1 Eldrazi tokens, or as Harry was referring to them as, Goblin Bombardment fodder. For my turn, I play a Tranquil Thicket, and then I have enough mana to finally cast Mirari's Wake, and I pass to Tony. Tony's turn is an explosion of action as he casts Far Wanderings, finding a basic, and then follows up by casting Beastmaster Ascension. He then moves to combat, swinging his now 4/4 Elemental token at Harry, which allows him to put a counter on Beastmaster Ascension. Harry chooses to jump block with one of the Eldrazi tokens, and sacrifices it to Goblin Bombardment, killing one of Sean's snakes. Sean plays a forest for his turn, and directs Hapatra in my direction. Harry responds by sacrificing his 2 Eldrazi tokens to Goblin Bombardment, trying to kill Hapatra, but a timely heroic intervention saves the Vizier. I take 2, and Sean chooses to put the -1/-1 counter on Harry's Hatcher. This nets him another snake and another insect. In Sean's second main phase, Quarry Hauler hits the field and puts another -1/-1 counter on the Hatcher. And once again, Sean is able to get another snake and another insect token. Having done quite a bit during his turn, Sean passes to Harry. Harry's turn is a little bit boring, and he plays a mountain before passing to me. For my turn, I play a forest, and Karametra finally joins the party. I then cast a Ajani's Chosen, who triggers Karametra, and I remember that I forgot to put in not only Canopy Vista, but Temple Garden in this deck, so instead I find a Plains. Having felt like I finally clawed my way back into this game, I pass to Tony. Tony's turn sees Omnath come into the field again, and he plays a forest to get another 5/5 Elemental token. Tony then decides to keep his creatures back for defense, and passes to Sean. During Sean's first main phase, he casts Sosuke, son of Sashiro. Having beefed up his snakes, he moves to combat, swinging Hapatra at Harry and 5 snakes at me. Harry responds by flashing in Bogardan Hellkite, and targets 2 damage at Hapatra and 1 damage at 3 snakes. Sean chooses to sacrifice the 3 snakes that are about to die to Baron, and bounce Karametra, Ajani's Chosen, and Hapatra. With no blockers available, I take 4 damage, and Sean goes to a second main phase. Sean then recasts Hapatra and passes turn. Harry's turn is uneventful, and by uneventful I mean literally he does nothing and passes to me. For my turn, I recast Karametra, and then tap a forest to cast a Pilgrim, finding a forest because of Karametra. I then recast Ajani's Chosen, find a Plains, and pass to Tony. At the end of my turn, Tony sacrifices the Elemental token with the -1/-1 counter on it to Perilous Forays. This causes Omnath to trigger, and he targets Hapatra. Sean in response sacrifices one of the snakes to bounce her back to his hand. With all those triggers resolving, Tony then gets to go find a forest, which then triggers Omnath to give him another 5/5 Elemental token. We also realize at this point that it's not just starting hands, but maximum hand size that the Vanguards reduce, and Harry discards 3 cards. During Tony's first main phase, he casts Rampaging Baloth, and then his land drop is Terramorphic Expanse, which gives him a 5/5 Elemental and a 4/4 Green Beast token. He then cracks Terramorphic Expanse to find a basic, and gets another Elemental and another Beast token. Moving to combat, Tony swings everything at Sean except for Omnath, thanks to Fires of Yavimaya. Declaring blockers, Sean puts his 4 insects in the way of the elementals, he sticks Sasuke in front of Rampaging Baloth, and he puts Quarry Hauler in front of one of the beast tokens, sacrificing the snake to bounce it back to his hand. We do a quick tally, and only 6 damage gets through to Sean, ending Tony's combat step. During his second main phase, Tony casts Harvest Season, and then realizes that he didn't use the May trigger from Beastmaster Ascension and lost out on all those counters. He still gets to go find 6 basics, which trigger Omnath 6 times and get him 6 5/5 Elemental tokens, but you can't help but feel bad for him. For Sean's turn, he starts off by casting Explore to draw a card, and then plays a Swamp. Having lost pretty much his entire board and not wanting to have all of his cards targeted by Tony, Sean passes to Harry. At the end of Sean's turn, Harry sacrifices Bogardan Hellkite to deal 1 damage to Tony. With Nim Deathmantle triggering, he then pays 4 to bring the Hellkite back, dealing another 5 to Tony. Realizing he has enough mana to do it again, Harry deals another 6 to Tony. For Harry's turn, he draws 2, but unfortunately one of them isn't a land, and he goes to cast Kiki-Jiki, Mirror Breaker. With Kiki-Jiki on the field, he moves to equip Lightning Greaves onto it, but Tony responds by sacrificing one of his elemental tokens to Forays, dealing 3 damage to Kiki-Jiki. Harry then responds, tapping Kiki-Jiki to make another Hellkite, dealing 5 more damage to Tony, and Tony responds to that by sacrificing another token to blast Harry in the face for 3. Tony then goes and finds his basics. Once that's resolved, Harry pays 7 mana to cast Kiki-Jiki again, and taps it to create another Hellkite, dealing 5 more damage to Tony. Harry then moves to combat, swinging all 3 Hellkites at Tony, killing him. For my turn, I play a Plains and then cast Sphere of Safety, which gets me a 2/2 cat token thanks to a Johnny's Chosen. With more than enough devotion on the field, Karametra is a creature, and I swing her at Harry. Unfortunately, I forget to make her unblockable, and Harry chooses to chump with Filigree Familiar, sacrificing it to Goblin Bombardment to draw a card and deal 1 damage to me. For Sean's turn, he casts Hapatra and takes 1 from Llanowar Wastes. He then casts Virulent Wound, targeting Harry's Hatcher, but Harry sacrifices it to Goblin Bombardment, dealing 1 damage to Sean. And with nothing else, Sean passes to Harry. For Harry's turn, we see Caverns of Soul come into play, naming goblins. He then taps Soul Ring to activate Nykthos, generating 6 red mana, and casts Duplicant, targeting Hapatra. Sean chooses to sacrifice Hapatra to bounce Avacyn's Pilgrim, and after that resolves, Harry moves to cast Skirk Prospector. Harry then casts Lightning Crafter, which is a combo card that works in tandem with Kiki-Jiki. Sean responds by casting Go for the Throat on Skirk Prospector, as Skirk Prospector is one of the combo pieces, but Harry has enough mana to bring it back with Nim Deathmantle. With his combo enabled, Harry is able to continually make copies of Lightning Crafter, who then champion Kiki-Jiki, who he then sacrifices to the Skirk Prospector and does 3 damage to Sean and myself an infinite number of times. Game review time. I think that was pretty fun. Vanguard is an interesting format, or should I say an interesting card. In retrospect, I think it probably would have been better for us all to pick probably 2 or 3 of them face down and then choose one of those 3 as opposed to just blind picking one. I say this mostly because I'm salty that I got stuck with Multani, who really didn't do anything for Karametra, whereas Sean was able to use Baron to a great effect because of his tokens, Tony was able to protect his entire board, which is fantastic, and Harry was able to draw 2 cards a turn in mono red. All in all, I think this is a pretty fun game. I was really impressed with Hapatra and how she worked really well with -1/-1 counters and the amount of tokens she was able to generate. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, all the decks except for Karametra were focused around token making, and it was also pretty cool that no one was playing blue. Please be sure to tune in every Monday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for 1 guaranteed video, with a second video popping up sometime during the week. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta, or you can watch me on Twitch at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in part by support from my Patreons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below or in the About section. And as always, thank you for watching, and please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.